In 1929, Arthur and Purefoy Machen moved to their last house, Linwood, on the High Street in Old Amersham, Buckinghamshire. There will be many memoirs and reminiscences written by theatre and literary types and Machen collectors, who all came to see the grand old man of letters. He would dispense his lethal dog and duck punch, and invitations were especially welcome if they coincided with Amersham Fair, which would be held in the High Street outside the Machens' front door. This well-known photo of Machen was taken outside of his house in Amersham by John Galsworth on Easter Day, 1930. In 1930, the Apellicon Press published Tom o' Bedlam and his song in an edition of 200 signed copies in a slipcase. In 1932, the Rofant Club, again in the States, published A Few Letters from Arthur Machen. This is an interesting collection of letters and was reprinted by the Aylesford Press in 1993. And then, in 1933, Ernest Benn published The Green Round. This is the manuscript. It was written in pencil on 4 stout Royal Court bond notepads, purchased from Albert Haddon, pharmacist and stationer in the High Street, Amersham. It has authorial corrections and amendments throughout, presumably made as Machen went along. Some of the leaves are a little loose and worn, but the pagination is intact. I bought the manuscript at the George Locke sale at Bloomsbury Book Auctions in December 2005, and I paid slightly more for it than I was planning to, but I've never regretted it. At the same time, I was able to buy the corrected typescript, which is inscribed by Machen to Galsworth. George put the typescript and the manuscript together. He bought them from different sources. There's a cutting enclosed from George Sims's catalogue offering the typescript originally for sale in 1953 for £7. This is the proof copy of The Green Round. This is inscribed to Sylvia Townsend Warner, Machen's niece by marriage. And this then is the first edition. This copy is signed to A.E. Waite. And this is the Arkham House edition, which didn't come out until 1968. This is The Cosy Room, published by Rich and Cowan in 1936. It contains obscure material by Machen, put together for the first time. I can still remember buying this copy from Cummings's bookshop in Lewes for £20. That was £20 that I didn't have at the time. The Cosy Room is difficult to come by, likewise The Children of the Pool, published by Hutchinson and Co., also in 1936. This is an important collection of Machen's later, longer stories. Again, it is a copy inscribed by Machen to A.E. Waite. I'm not mentioning all of the books that Machen contributed to, just a few to give a flavour and when they're especially interesting. One such is this collection, Missing from Their Homes, published by Hutchinson in 1936. It contains a story by Machen, The Dover Road, a story that wasn't collected until 1992. This is the fourth impression, which suggests that copies should be numerous, but it is the only copy I've ever come across. In 1937, a civic luncheon was held in Newport, Gwent, for Machen's 74th birthday. This is the rather smart printed menu that was produced for the occasion. Another celebratory dinner was also held in his honour in 1937, hosted by the Literary Circle at the National Liberal Club on the 29th of October. This copy has tipped inside a letter from Machen in his characteristic green ink, thanking Valentine Ackland for a bottle that was sent as a present. Another collection that Machen contributed to, which is quite obscure, is Path and Pavement, published by Eric Grant in 1937 and contains Machen's short story Ritual. It's another unaccountably scarce collection. It was discovering this story, that hadn't hitherto been collected, that set me off compiling Ritual and other stories for Tartarus Press in 1992. As Machen became more elderly, his output decreased, but in 1937 he did write an introduction to W.J.T. Collins' The Romance of the Echoing Wood. There was a limited edition of this very smart book, of 220 copies, signed by Collins. Even more congenial to Machen would have been writing an introduction to The Pleasant Land of Gwent by Fred Hando in 1944. There was a 202 copy limited edition signed by Hando, but this is just the ordinary edition. It contains Hando's wonderful illustrations of the Gwent countryside that Machen would have known very well. The last collection of fiction published in Machen's lifetime was Holy Terrors, published in 1946 by Penguin. Machen's handwriting had deteriorated by this time, and his pen obviously didn't like the poor paper, which is why his inscription in this copy is so poor. Purefoy Machen died on the 30th of March 1947, and Machen died in the same year on the 15th of December, aged 84. But the publication of books by Arthur Machen doesn't end in the 1940s. What I'll look at in the last video in this series are the posthumous publications. But before this episode ends, a quick note on original letters by Arthur Machen. They do come up for sale, and their value depends very much on the subject matter. What I have here is a collection of 18 letters written between 1941 and 1947 by Machen to James Holroyd. Holroyd visited him on a regular basis in the 1940s. The usual arrangement was for Holroyd to knock at Linwood, Machen's home, at 6:15, and then they would go on to the King's Arms. Machen and Holroyd shared what Machen would have called the curious art of London. And Machen says in the letters that from the very nature of our occult art we are select and exclusive. As one works through the letters, they become more poignant. One sees Machen's handwriting, along with his health, deteriorating.